The internet thrives on spectacle. Every week, a new name blows up. Someone does something so outrageous that people can't help but click. But every so often, a moment comes along that doesn't just grab attention, it hijacks it completely, taking over conversations, feeds, and headlines alike. That's exactly what happened when Lil Tay, the self-proclaimed youngest flexer of the century, turned 18 and instantly, and I mean instantly, launched an OnlyFans account, flipping the entire narrative about her in one bold move. We've all seen questionable career pivots before. Child stars struggle all the time to reinvent themselves once they hit adulthood, sometimes flopping spectacularly. But this wasn't just another awkward phase or desperate publicity stunt. The way this was executed, it didn't feel organic, it didn't feel spontaneous. Instead, it felt like a countdown clock had been quietly running for years behind the scenes, ticking closer and closer to zero. Then, the second the clock hit midnight, the plan kicked in, perfectly timed, perfectly packaged, and perfectly disturbing in its calculated nature. And while some onlookers applauded it as a brilliant business move, a savvy, if controversial, reinvention, others couldn't shake the sense that this wasn't simply a personal choice. It wasn't just a young woman stepping into adulthood on her own terms. It felt like the final step in a long, coldly calculated setup, one carefully engineered by people behind the curtain. When you start to connect the dots and see the clues hiding in plain sight, you might start to wonder, how far back does this really go? How many years of planning led to this exact moment? Wild earnings right after midnight when the clock struck. Midnight on her 18th birthday, Lil Tay's new chapter didn't begin with a song release, a big interview, or a viral TikTok. Instead, it started behind a paywall. At exactly 12:01 a.m., the OnlyFans account was live, fully stocked with content, immediately raking in subscribers at a staggering rate. Reports flooded social media and news outlets alike. The young internet star allegedly earned over $1 million in less than 24 hours. Fans and analysts scrambled to calculate what that broke down to, earnings per minute, even per second. It was record-breaking territory, something few influencers ever achieve. But beyond the shock of the amount, the speed and precision of the launch raised eyebrows. The rollout was flawless. There were no glitches, no delays, no awkward setting up my page posts. Everything was operational from the get-go, as if the entire account had been waiting silently in the wings. That's when the biggest question hit me. If everything was ready to launch at the exact second she became legally an adult, how long had this content, this entire business plan, been sitting in the vault? This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. It was the execution of a meticulous strategy, carefully timed to the second. Counting the seconds pre-filmed or live, if you watch the content posted on that first day, it becomes clear very quickly that this wasn't slapped together overnight. Some shots have lighting setups that would require planning. More than just the casual selfie with the phone flash, hair, makeup, wardrobe choices, everything looks polished, professional, almost cinematic. You get the feeling there was a whole production team behind the scenes. Not just one person pressing record. Whispers began circulating online. Was all this footage pre-filmed days, maybe even weeks before the launch? And if so, who else was in the room? Who directed the shoot? Who approved the final cut? This wasn't just a private adult content launch, it was a carefully choreographed debut. Because if this content was prepared well in advance, that reveals a much deeper truth. This wasn't a spontaneous act of empowerment. It was a business strategy with a launch date, a target audience, and an elaborate marketing plan waiting for the green light. The audience wasn't just waiting. They were primed, prepped, and ready, and that audience, it might be far more disturbing than most want to admit. It includes not just curious adults, but the very same fans who followed her as a child, many of them still underage, now expected to convert into paying customers. That raises serious ethical and moral questions about the entire enterprise. A family torn between profit and panic. Looking back to 2018, Lil Tay was an internet wildfire. A 9-year-old flaunting stacks of cash, designer clothes, sports cars, an image that both fascinated and unsettled viewers. But behind the glitter and glam, her family life was chaotic and fractured. Reports emerged that her brother scripted much of her dialogue, that her parents fought bitterly over control and custody, and that legal battles had been dragging on behind closed doors. Then, just as suddenly as she rose to fame, she vanished. No more posts, no more appearances. It was as if she disappeared overnight. Then came the bizarre and confusing death announcement that her family later admitted was a hoax, a cruel, confusing stunt that only deepened the mystery and concern around her well-being. Given that tumultuous history, you have to ask, is this OnlyFans move really her own independent decision? Or is it just another phase of the same management team or family members pulling new strings? Is this a new form of exploitation masked as empowerment? Because if someone has been steering her career behind the scenes for years, this launch suddenly looks a lot less like a bold personal choice and a lot more like a blueprint for monetizing controversy, a well-oiled machine with a new, disturbing engine, record-breaking, or just a show. The first day numbers, if they're accurate, place Lil Tay alongside internet personalities like Bella Thorne and Bod Bobby, who both made similar controversial OnlyFans splashes. But unlike those stars, Lil Tay didn't maintain public hype leading up to the launch. She was silent for years, a ghost online. So how does someone go from total obscurity and silence to $1 million day? How does a name that faded away suddenly break records on day one? Some say it was the pure shock factor. The internet loves a scandal. And nothing grabs attention like a child star turning to adult content as soon as they legally can. Others suspect the numbers were inflated for marketing purposes, a carefully crafted illusion designed to generate buzz and curiosity. And if those numbers were faked or exaggerated, then it worked. The fake figure becomes the bait and curiosity becomes the real cash generator. People pay just to see what the fuss is about, and the controversy feeds the business model. But there's another layer to this story, one that turns the outrage itself into a crucial part of the plan. The backlash isn't a problem, it's the product. The controversy is the marketing, backlash, or bravado. The internet divided itself into over the launch. Some defended Lil Tay's right to make her own decisions as an adult. They argued she should be free to control her image and career without judgment. But others accused her entire team of grooming her fanbase for years, building an audience of young followers who grew up watching her antics, only to now become paying customers for adult content. That accusation struck a nerve. It raised deep questions about the ethics of marketing, exploitation, and consent. What's truly uncomfortable is that a large portion of her earliest fans were kids, children, who grew up alongside her online. Now, those same kids are the ones being asked to pay and subscribe. It's a stark and unsettling shift, and one that few people have fully grappled with. Instead of pushing back against criticism, her camp did something unexpected. They embraced it. Every angry post, every viral headline, every backlash tweet became free advertising, amplifying the controversy and driving more eyes and clicks. And when you realize outrage was the fuel, not the fire, it changes everything. The backlash isn't an obstacle to success, it's the engine driving it forward. Where did all the outrage go? Normally, a scandal this explosive dominates headlines for weeks or even months. News outlets dig deeper, reporters chase exclusives, and social media debates rage on. But here's the strange part. After the initial explosion of coverage, the outrage mostly disappeared. The story was pushed off the front page, overshadowed by newer scandals and viral moments. No major follow-up investigations, no big exposes. It was almost like the narrative got pulled from the headlines on purpose. In that silence, the controversy cooled. What looked like a PR disaster transformed into a curiosity-driven win. The public's outrage burned out, replaced by passive curiosity or indifference. And that's the survival trick of internet careers in the digital age. You don't have to kill the outrage, you just have to outlast it. What happens when the fever dies down? That $1 million launch day was the absolute high point, the peak of the hype cycle. But viral bursts don't last forever. Eventually, the hype cools. Headlines vanish, the chatter dies down, and then the real work begins. Maintenance, keeping fans interested, producing content, staying relevant. If those launch day numbers were exaggerated, and that's a big if, the post-launch drop-off could be brutal. When the only thing you're famous for is a shocking debut, every next move has to be even more sensational, and that's when the lines start getting crossed. The boundaries between empowerment, exploitation, and desperation blurred. It's a dangerous game to keep pushing the envelope, and many who try it eventually burn out or crash. Final frame: who's controlling the script now? Lil Tay's career has never been about slow growth or steady development. It's been shock after shock, headline after headline, controversy after controversy. But with every big moment, the same question hangs in the air: who's writing the script? If it's truly her, if she's in control of this bold, provocative play, then this might be the most fearless move in her career yet. But if it's someone else, if this is the work of a management team, family members, or others orchestrating from behind the scenes, then this might be the most calculated stunt we've seen in years. And something tells me this story isn't anywhere near its final chapter. There are more moves coming, more drama ahead, and more questions about power, agency, and control. Because on the internet, the show always goes on, and the script is never quite what it seems. ***, subscribe for more in-depth content.